Now let's go back to our top story. Zacchaeus Adedeji is the new acting executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. He replaces Mohammed Nami, who has served since December 2019. But what can he expect in his new role? We're joined now by economist Professor Frank Ozoh. Prof, thank you for joining us on Newsnight. Zacchaeus Adedeji, now the chairman of FIRS. Yeah, right. Thank you. So what should be his expectations now? What should he be looking at as he resumes?
Well, if we follow what the president have just announced by forming the committee to look at reforming the tax system in Nigeria is to raise the revenue, more revenue for the federal government. Every Nigerian knows what Nigerians are going through now since the withdrawal of oil subsidy, PMA subsidies, and it has increased the general price level, consumers' prices. It has ratcheted and increased the consumer prices to all classes of people. Now, what should be the appropriate tax system as to raise revenue for the government because it has to do its job? That should be the thing. And what should be that optimal tax level and the tax rate, tax revenue, that is consistent with minimizing the immaceration to the common masses? That's where I am coming in. I will come into it. My advice to him is that what can you do in such a way that you can raise the revenue base of the country without penalizing the entire Nigerian community, the business class, the working class, and the general masses? These are the things. How do you do that? That's actually what I think we should be looking at. The new chief in the IRS should be looking at.
As the new tax chief, what would you be saying in terms of specifics as to what to do? There's been a lot of talk about widening the tax net, and we heard from the chief of the tax committee that he wants to reduce taxes, by 83% to cut. I mean, how realistic is it? We want to increase the tax net or widen it for that matter, but on the other hand, there's a plan to reduce, taxes by 83%. Of course, multiple taxes and what have you. What would be those specifics that you would advise him on?
What I will advise him actually is to look at the taxable capacity first of all. Then in order to do what we call tax illusion, so that you broaden the tax base, and then with tax illusion, revenues will come in. There's something we call Laffer curve. There's something we call Laffer curve in economics. The Laffer curve shows you the revenue. As you raise the tax rate, the revenue will increase up to a maximum point. After that point, if you raise the tax rate again, the revenue will eventually diminish. Now, what do? That's what you watch at. Another thing again is that, in Nigeria, I'm not looking at it from the statistical point of view and all the rest of the things. I'm looking at it from definitely what are the things the loopholes you block as you raise the revenue. Because if you look at what we call tax expenditures, if we look at tax expenditures, it has been a loophole for the business class, those importers and all the rest of them importing for government to go to the government and waive import taxes, waive every other thing, and then import those things, and the Nigerian and the masses bear the brunt for such things. These big classes, this big business community may not be paying such taxes, and then the impact, immaceration the worsening effect is more on the masses. Now, what do? What you do as to avoid the people bearing the burden, the final resting place of taxes is this: flatten the rate and broaden the tax base, so that as people pay tax, they are not even aware that they are paying such tax. Provided every person could be brought into the net, if you are getting some income, you pay a minimum rate. The burden will not be much, so that when you are paying, it is called tax illusion or revenue illusion. If the people will be paying that tax and not knowing, not being aware that they are paying such taxes, it's not burdensome on them. Now, I read something from the government when they said, "Oh, we are going to go for the fruits, not the seeds." Now, I look at it, I say, well, if the fruits, to tax the fruit means, of course, you have to give manure to the seeds and to the tree as to raise fruits. Now, the government should be aware that don't look at only that you are taxing the fruit. Look at it from the way that there is a reinvestment quotient in such a way that it will be palatable, it will be tolerable for the business class to reinvest, both foreign investment and domestic real investment, as to raise the national income, disposable national income, to raise output, to raise employment, and stabilize prices, so that you do not have a problem in these macroeconomic systems. Another problem to watch there will be what we call the acceleration principle. There is a way you raise taxes in such a situation. You raise your taxes, it penalizes consumption. Therefore, you are moving towards depression. You are moving towards recession. Those things are things to watch if you are a manager of tax system. It's not what percentage of tax will be consistent with a productive economy. That's what you should be looking at. What a percentage of tax rate that will be consistent with real investment, both domestic and foreign, as to increase output, increase national income, increase jobs, stabilize prices without penalizing the community that is paying these taxes within the residents, those who are within the residents, taxable resident communities.
Right.
This is the way I'm looking at it.
Prof. Now, one thing is you can force a cow to the stream, but you cannot force him to drink. Mm-hmm. You've spoken from a very brilliant perspective, but then what about tax compliance? How can he achieve much of that?
Tax what?
Compliance.
Tax compliance.
Getting the people to pay,
willingly want
pay
to
their
pay
taxes. Yeah.
To willingly want to pay.
Excuse me. How do we when the white people were here, they were collecting their taxes easily. You can raise taxes in such a way like that, it doesn't create problems. It is you broaden the tax base. If you broaden the tax base and then reduce the tax rate the way that it is bearable, the maceration rate will be low. And people you are paying tax, you may not know. Broaden your tax base. While you are watching, that, like what I said, the Laffer curve effect, you watch it so that as the tax rate is broadened and is flattened, and then the tax revenue is increasing up to an optimal point of a tax rate that is consistent with economic growth and stability. Because you must be watching economic growth and stability. You don't impose tax as to penalize the growth quotient of it. You can't impose tax. So once you are imposing tax, what is that optimal rate that tax could be imposed without penalizing real investment, both domestic and foreign, without penalizing national income, national output, employment, and therefore stabilizing prices? And what is that tax rate that you can allow foreign investors to come in without shying away from the area? These are the things. What is that tax rate? It's an empirical thing. It's an empirical study. You can't just put a figure like that. It's an empirical study that you have to do to find out what optimum what optimum tax rate that is consistent with growth stability and price stability, and even exchange rate stability too.
Right. In 30 seconds, how do you make tax collection more effective and efficient? That seems to be where the challenge is.
That's what I've been telling you. How do you make it? Is you broaden the tax base and reduce the tax rate. Once you broaden the tax net, reduce the tax rate, you raise the revenue. It's like this. If you go to a market person and the person who is selling market, you can reduce your prices to the barest minimum and make little profit. But then, do you have volume in sales? Do you have volume in sales? It's equivalent to raising high taxes or high prices, and then you make much profit from each single commodity you sell, but then you don't have volume. Now, that's what I'm saying. If you can have broaden the tax base.
Thank you so much, Frank Ozoh, professor and economist. Thank you for helping us understand this. Good to see you on Newsnight.